Hi everyone, Jenna here. I'm getting ready to do some art alchemy work, and I thought I would record a video to do some sharing about false light in the spiritual communities. I have another example that I think is important to share, and one that also may connect us to some of the larger cult of ball mechanics and help us understand the type of deception that's been going on this planet. You can hear that my voice is in a difficult place today. I'm in a healing process. I've been on a long journey over this last year, unveiling the deceptions of the cult of Baal and the Epstein network, and deeply understanding the levels of negative patterning they have created in this earth matrix, in the consciousness field of humanity, understanding the violations that have come against humanity, the violations of divine rights, understanding the larger scale attempts at consciousness containment and limitation of humanity, understanding some of the more overt deception tactics that they take to maintain their power and influence and to prevent accountability from coming to them, to understand the levels of satanic compromise and abuse that have occurred in this world. So that's a big journey to go on, and I know a lot of you have been on that journey too. And when we do the spiritual work to understand that at a deep level, to understand that entire web, that entire satanic web at a deep level, that's big work. And I've been on a big journey with that, transmuting a lot of negative consciousness patterns through my system, and seeing where I've been deceived and where I've had violations of sacred space in a lot of different ways. And today we're going to talk about spiritual communities. We're going to talk about a spiritual community that I joined and participated in years ago, about 3 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago, actually. And a lot of the spiritual communities that I have engaged with, I have found value in. I'm not sharing this to say that there's no value there. I'm sharing this to say that there's been compromise that has happened, and it's good for us to be able to look at that and understand it. So for those of you who have been following this channel, you might remember that I shared some information about the false Arthur recently, earlier this year. I'm going to share some paintings that happened yesterday as I was processing this deception and this infiltration of the spiritual communities that has happened over the years. And this will help us talk about this a little bit. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about related to the false Arthur, go back on the YouTube channel and check out the videos where I do a debunking of Adam Apollo's supposed past life regression with Sarah Breskman Cosme. This incident, I would call it, is a great example of satanic deception and major ego distortion, just major ego distortion running in the spiritual community. And so in multiple videos on this YouTube channel and on the page that's linked below, I'll link some applicable references below that you can check out. I talk about the way in which this person has portrayed themselves as a high level divine spiritual archetype and has not demonstrated that behavior at all, has demonstrated the opposite behavior. Actually, that's actually the definition of satanic contradiction, when we start to see people in power, even spiritual leaders, portraying a version of themselves that is divine, or even in this instance, like this guy portraying himself as a divine avatar when he's not. when he's very clearly displayed satanic behavior and has very clearly shown himself as a predator. And so in multiple videos, I go through this whole experience of doing a large scale analysis on his regression, bringing through a lot of information from my past interactions with this person, and we have multiple accounts from other women out in the community who have raised their hands and have said, me too, I have also experienced something weird with this person who portrayed themselves to be a high level divine spiritual teacher. And I agree. And so we have multiple corroborating accounts of my perception of this person as well. So that happened months ago. I've moved on from that since. I'm, continuing to do my work in other ways. And yesterday I attended Marguerite Rigoglioso's Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene event. She put on a 3-hour free event for people in her community, and she was pitching a new 6-month Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene course that's coming up. I'm going to describe something that happened in that event. I sent an email about this to the Star Family Wisdom community to give them a heads up about some concerns that I have. And I don't share this to be defamatory. This is simply sharing real concerns, real spiritual safety concerns. And if I have had a spiritual safety violation, and if that has occurred in a community that I have recommended to you in the past, it's my responsibility as a leader to come back and say, I have an issue I need to share with you, and I need to tell you that community doesn't feel safe to me anymore. That's my responsibility as a leader, and so that's what I'm doing here. And so I attended this event with the intention of coming into sacred space, with the intention of finding sanctuary, because I kind of need it right now. I'm finding sanctuary in myself with my painting work and all of that, but I'll show these in just a minute, but I wanted to find a little sanctuary in community. And years ago, I had taken Marguerite's a few of her courses. I had joined a few of her Mary circles. I had interviewed her on the Star Family Wisdom podcast, and I had really enjoyed my interaction with her, and I had found immense value in her books. She has been a scholar of ancient priestess history on the planet, and that's really valuable information for us. And it's been part of my path of reclamation, of remembering the true wisdom of the priestess lineages on the planet and working to embody that in myself. So I had found a lot of support in her work previously, years ago, but I haven't connected with her in maybe 2 or 3 years because my journey has just taken me in other directions. I've been doing my own priestess oracle work, as you've seen through this channel and through my work with Star Family Wisdom. And so as I've been on this journey, sometimes I dip back into different spiritual communities that I've connected with in the past, and that has been revealing for me. I've had revelations, and I'm here to share a revelation with you today. So I joined this circle with the intention of healing, with the intention of being in a supportive space where I could connect with wisdom of Mother Mary, of Sophia consciousness that would be nourishing for me. And I have to admit, before I entered this space, I was nervous. I was nervous about whether there would be compromise, because I have found so much throughout these communities, and not just like minor distortion, like little spiritual bypassing of shadow and stuff like that. I just put my hand in the flame. I'm talking about like more major serious issues, So I joined this circle with that intention and was kind of a little on guard, because I've had a lot of really negative interference over this last year. I've had a lot of targeting from the cult of Baal because of the work I've been doing and because of the truth speaking I've been doing. And I don't say that to induce fear in anyone. It's just the nature of the game. You know, it's the nature of the game. When you confront the negativity, you're going to have to confront the negativity, and whatever entanglement you have with that negativity is going to allow that negativity to affect you in some way. And so we've all had entanglement with this larger network that has attempted to control humanity. We've all had entanglement with different spiritual teachers and communities, etc. And so part of my work has been disentangling from all of these ways my consciousness had bought into authority or programs in this world that aren't for me anymore. And so I was a little on guard, but you know, the first hour was okay. It was going well. It wasn't very deep, you know, in terms of the type of material Marguerite has historically shared. Historically, she's also shared a lot of information about the Nephilim agenda on this planet, the negative forces, the negative reptilian and Anunnaki forces that in our ancient times subjugated humanity and have still been interacting with humanity in various negative ways. And so her previous work had been very much focused on how do we regain our sovereignty from these negative forces, and how do we understand the mechanics of these negative forces, in addition to providing beautiful temple and priestess training spaces for people. So her work was broad in that way. In some of the previous conversations on the Star Family Wisdom channel with her, you can hear her talk about that. And so a lot of my work has involved understanding the Nephilim agenda on the planet and confronting it, and working to, this is a long-term process, but working to bring accountability and justice to this situation. And so I'm in this circle, and when she gets to the point of talking about the upcoming course, the upcoming 6-month class that she's putting on, she starts showing the class page, and on the page, she has a video from Adam Apollo. I immediately had this response of like, oh God, oh no, we have vipers in the temple. And I literally said that in the chat. I said it in a respectful way. And I said, Marguerite, I need to let you know about some major distortion and compromise that has been identified related to Adam Apollo. And I am going to follow up with an email to let you know about that. So I didn't want to project a bunch of my information into her event. That was not my intention. The intention was to simply flag that we have an issue with this person, that there's a predatory issue with this person that she may not be aware of. A little later in the event, someone commented on my comment asking where they could find that information. So I went ahead and shared it and said, not sharing this to overshadow what Marguerite's sharing here, but this is a serious issue of predation in the spiritual communities. Here's a link to the page where you can find more information. So after that, someone else said that was rude. So I had a little bit of like attack energy coming at me in this supposed sacred space. And I was having a trauma response, seeing Adam Apollo's presentation there, seeing her promoting him. So I follow up with an email thinking, you know, the old Marguerite that I know, the old Marguerite would receive this information, because I have a lot of information compiled on this, not only the debunking of his regression from a very high level shamanic forensic standpoint, understanding all of the consciousness patterns that are there and documenting them, but also finding connections to the Epstein network and having that all documented, and also having corroborating evidence from some of you out there. Thank you. So I had this whole package of information that a spiritual leader should look at and take seriously. Any leader who is responsible for a group of people, especially in this sort of instance where there is consciousness opening happening, and there is the ability for other forces to work with you, positive or negative, that spiritual leader, if they are as highly trained as they claim to be, they should take that seriously. And so I've been doing some painting over the last day because Marguerite's response to my email was alarming. And this is some of my healing and integration painting. This says on the back, it says, I am validated, I am safe, I am free, only source is welcome here. This one says on the back, vipers in the temple healing, return to sacred space and safety. And if any of you watching were in that event, you might have seen in the chat that I shared that I was having an emotional response to this situation in the event, live in the event, because I was literally finding vipers in the temple. And I've been finding vipers in the temple. Jesus said that, that there were vipers in the temple in Israel when he arrived. I've literally been finding vipers in all of these temple spaces. I'm literally finding beings that have become heavily compromised that are wearing a mask. And it's not okay. So I'm going to tell you about Marguerite's response in just a minute. And there's a link below so you can see the whole exchange, because I think it's important to share publicly where this sort of exchange has happened and someone is not standing in their highest integrity for the safety of people in their community. So this one on the back says, false Arthur healing. I am believed. I am a powerful priestess. And then this one on the back says, a reward for my hard work, because I've worked really hard over this last year. I deserve a reward at some point. So anyway, I'm going to do a little painting here just to help my system integrate this experience as I continue to tell you about Marguerite's response. So I sent this email to her sharing, Marguerite, I have information that tells me Adam has been compromised by the cult of Baal, the Epstein network, and I'm sharing all of this with you so that you can reevaluate his presence in your temple space for the safety of your community. And also, it was nice to be back in your community, and I'd love to be able to join something like your 6-month Mary experience for sacred space, but I'm not going to be able to do so unless Adam is removed from the temple. So basically what I have arrived at is that some of these beings, like an Adam Apollo, for instance, have been so heavily compromised by the Satanic network, but they're really good at putting on the performance still of mysticism and magic and spirituality and all of that. They're really good at the performance, but they have entity attachment. They have an entity working through them, because that's the only way that level of compromise is truly possible. And I'll just pause here and talk about the larger Epstein network in terms of some of the really horrendous sexual and child abuse and exploitation harm that has happened, that is well documented and verified. When you start to look at that, the mind kind of breaks a little under the question of, how is that even possible? How is it even possible that humans with souls are capable of harming children on that level? Well, they're not all the way human. They're not. They have allowed the overlord, dark forces, the negative entity, negative reptilian Anunnaki forces, to work through them. They have allowed entity attachment. Some of them knowingly, some of them unknowingly. And so my system over the years has become very highly attuned to what that feels like, and has become very highly attuned to a mask that might be portraying a certain type of narrative or experience that may not actually be truly of the light. Satanic mimicry is a thing. There's a lot of it going on this planet. It's insane. When you start to see the breadth of satanic mimicry that has happened, and this level of entity attachment that has allowed for beings to wear a certain mask but not be operating from actual divine behavior, it's insane. It's wild. So some of the people who have engaged in some of the worst sexual compromise, or who are on that level, very compromised, are being controlled by negative entities, basically. And then entity attachment and influence can also work in other ways. It doesn't have to be that highly compromised. So when I sent this email to Marguerite calling out not only the regression debunking with Adam, the serious predation concerns that are there, the sexual predation concerns, the Nephilim consciousness patterns that show predation, also tying it back to her previous work related to the Nephilim agenda. And when I showed the Epstein network connections, her response was fascinating. It was basically shutting me down and saying that she has a boundary on people circulating allegations about other teachers in her temple space, and that maybe the temple space may not be for me then. Isn't that interesting? So what I was trying to do was flag a serious spiritual safety concern. And her reply also said, I found some valuable information in Adam's video, so I'm going to leave it for my priestesses because I want them to learn from him, basically. I'm summarizing. I'm paraphrasing here. You can read the actual exchange below. Isn't that interesting? One of the highest level priestesses in the world. I'm not saying that from ego. I'm just saying it because I've been doing the work. Shows up with extraordinary evidence about predation concerns. And you say, no, I want my priestesses to learn from him. That's not the old Marguerite I knew. That's not the Marguerite I interviewed years ago. A high-level oracle priestess would stand with one of her priestesses when that priestess brings a concern of predation. She would not stand with the predator. So let's just let that sink in for a moment. Why did Marguerite side with the predator? A very well documented predator. Why did Marguerite side with the predator and not a credible priestess? What's that about? I can also say that my follow-up to her after this exchange, after she replied to me, was sharing with her that I had a major trauma response, and I had another one upon her refusal to actually take a stand for the priestess. And it just told me everything I need to know about what's working through her right now. Marguerite has been compromised. Marguerite is not acting as herself. That is my assessment. I experienced harm yesterday in her event. Her event was not held in safety. Her event has been infiltrated, or her school has been infiltrated. Her consciousness has been infiltrated. She is no longer supporting an anti-Nephilim agenda. She is promoting people like Adam Apollo and refusing to take very serious evidence of predation seriously. And that's a major concern. But I want to continue talking about why this might be happening. Because again, my concern is the liberation of souls. My concern is the liberation of Marguerite. My concern is the liberation of her community. from any negative entity entanglement that has occurred. My concern is the liberation of the Jesus and Mary blueprints and wisdom from the dark forces. Because when they start to enact these levels of compromise, control, deception in communities that work with Gnostic Christian teachings and work with the truth of Christ, we have entered into one of the worst, darkest levels of deception that could happen on this planet, next to the level of child harm that has happened. And we have to take this seriously. And we have to also remember how heavily compromised the Christian church has been in various ways. It's very easy to say some words, but not actually do the behavior. It's very easy to say some words, but not actually hold predators accountable, right? It's very easy to say some spiritual words and then completely spiritual bypass a major issue of harm. So my consciousness has been harmed by being a part of, most recently, Marguerite's spiritual community. I still recommend her past work. I find value in it. It's important information, but I do not consider her space safe anymore. And again, it brings up for me the larger question of, why did that even happen? Why is she not taking this more seriously? Like, what is going on with Marguerite's consciousness? And so I want to talk about a particular truth I've been integrating and learning about. And I don't have all of this totally figured out yet. So this is an exploratory conversation to just ask these questions and to let ourselves be open to a bigger adventure of liberation on this planet than we had maybe thought it would be. So I've learned throughout this year that the negative forces, the ET negative forces that are powerful, galactic, etc., that have essentially been quarantined on this planet for a long time. So like they've really not been able to operate out in the galaxy. They've been quarantined. They've been having to kind of work with the Earth matrix as it evolves. So from the time of the flood, we had a reset. We've been working through our evolutionary cycle again. Some of these dark forces were relegated to the inner Earth realms for a long time, and we're only able to operate on the surface through incarnational cycles. So just like any other soul, if you want to come on the surface of Earth and have a life, you have to incarnate. So that means we can have positive souls incarnating, negative souls incarnating, both, right? We've experienced that throughout history. And yet there's been an increase in negative activity, polarization, interference in the last 100 years or so, while we have been experiencing more technological advancements on the surface. So it came into my awareness this year that because of the Epstein network, cult of balls, engagement with these negative forces, which really started back in like Nazi Germany, a little like early Nazi Germany, early 1900s, when the Nazi forces made contact with the negative ET forces in the inner Earth. That changed the game substantially on the level of technology that surface humans could access and the level of negative interference that the negative ETs could also influence on the surface, because they needed the help of humans. They needed humans to agree, basically, to like let them overtake the surface again. So they've done that in some tricky ways. And I've learned that they have had cloning technology for a very fucking long time. This is a galactic technology. It's not new to Earth. So we need to also zoom out and think about the fact that in this galaxy, in multiple galaxies, we have technology that is thousands of years more advanced than what we have experienced on the surface of Earth during our lifetimes. That's a truth. It's out there. It's here. It's already here. It's already here. It's already here. It has been hidden from us. And this cloning technology, again, has been operated by the negative ET forces. It is their technology. It's not human technology. It's their technology. They've been using it for a long time, it appears. Maybe hundreds of years, but just in more small targeted ways in the past, because their influence on the surface was a lot less. But in the last 100 years, with the Nazi opening the door to them, it appears as though we have a much larger issue on our hands that I'm working to understand. Because I've had to confront this question about the Epstein network and their compromise. You know, when you really start to learn about the deep, deep, deep satanic levels of compromise and disgusting ritual abuse and things that have happened, and nasty sexual compromise that has happened, you have to take a step back and even ask, how could a normal human even agree to that? How could even a human who is power hungry will kind of, sell their soul to get things, even that human, how could that human engage in some of these things? Like, the child rape and cannibalism even, and just horrific abuse and things that have happened that is documented in the Epstein files. You have to ask the question, how did these humans even agree to this? Well, we have some information on that. We have some information on how a lot of humans who have wanted positions of power, fame, wealth, success, have been willing to give themselves over to the agenda that has been presented to them as the future agenda for Earth, which has been a negative one. And they've allowed their vessels to be overtaken by these beings. Some of that has happened in the past just through normal, handshake agreement with the negative forces saying, okay, take over me. But then it has gotten worse. How has it gotten worse? How is it possible for such horrific entity attachment and operation through vessels? How has that been possible? That's the question I've been asking, because I've been on this journey of understanding the level of entity interference happening through people in this world, etc. And so I've come to this conclusion through a lot of research and my own galactic intelligence of remembering how stasis pod technology and all of that works. I just got chills. Yeah, they have fucking swapped bodies, pardon my language. So again, we have to throw out all of the science we've been told is true on the surface, that Dolly the sheep got cloned in whenever that was, 20 years ago or something, that that's the level, we're just now arriving at cloning technology. No, we're not. No, we're not, actually. We're not. So think about this. Here's a hypothesis on how this might work. So let's say there's a soul, a being who is advanced in some way, shape, or form. Like Elon Musk might be a good example of that, right? Bringing very advanced galactic intelligence, but we really need him. We really need him compromised, and we really need him working for the dark forces. How are we going to do that? So if I'm a negative reptilian, how am I going to do that? Well, I might steal him I might put him in a stasis pod, and I might connect the consciousness of the original human, the original soul that was occupying that human. I might connect that consciousness to a cloned version so that we can run the blueprint of the original and make it seem just like the original. They have the original memories of that person that's in stasis, so they can operate like them, they can act like them, they can think like them. But the clone now is owned by the dark forces. The clone can allow for a negative entity to enter it and operate it. So it still looks and sounds and operates mostly like the original, but in a satanic way. Is that making sense? So the stasis pod technology is meant to preserve a body. It just preserves a body for as long as it needs to be preserved. And it allows for the consciousness that was assigned to that vessel to remain operating, to remain like either kind of asleep until it gets woken up, or stolen. I know. It's crazy. These beings are crazy. These beings have done crazy stuff. I've been trying to wrap my mind around this because, again, I've had to ask these questions, and on the level of some of these even worse, characters and compromise that has happened. Like, how is that even possible? How do you even get a being to function like that? This is how. This is how. You hijack the blueprint of the original being and you replace them with an actor who can operate in a satanic way. A lot of celebrities have become clones. A lot of pop stars have become clones. A lot of political leaders have become clones. This is big news. This has been big news for me over the last year. So I have a couple of pages on the Star Family Wisdom site that I'll link below as well that go into some of the detail on this and describe how is this possible, where did this technology come from, which I've already somewhat described. Some question and answering about where do we go from here? Like, how do we address this situation? How do we liberate the beings that are in stasis? If we have a bunch of beings who've been hijacked on this planet and who've been replaced with beings who are either going to be extremely compromised and willing to go along with satanic agendas, or just replaced with mimics who are going to minimize accountability towards satanic agendas. That's another tactic. So I have that question right now for certain people, leaders in the spiritual communities too. Like Deepak Chopra as an example, like gross, right? Like seeing like his interaction with Epstein in the files. It starts to break the brain because you see this high level leader who's been able to operate in like various ways that seem aligned spiritually, but then there's all of this like horrendous shadow under the surface, or like in this sort of instance with Marguerite, this complete refusal to hold a predator accountable and this like desire to protect a predator. It's like, where did that programming come from? Where did the programming about protecting predators come from? Because I thought we were doing the opposite on this planet. So I've had to go through this like larger exploration of what might be driving some of this behavior. And I started to explore this also in relation to the Harry and Meghan Markle situation. And I started to explore this in relation to, again, understanding the levels of sexual compromise that Markle, the Markle operative, has been capable of. When you start to see some of that, which I won't repeat here because we don't need to bring that grossness into this conversation. Again, when you start to see some of that, you have to ask the question, how was she even capable of some of that? Like, that is so gross. It is so gross. And so, again, like, it is not normal consciousness. Like something has overtaken that being. This negative force, this negative agenda has overtaken that being. And again, some have willingly signed up. So in some instances, what I think may have happened is we may have had a clone get introduced to a situation so that they can engage in coercive control. They can engage in lots of satanic lying and contradiction and sexual compromise and all of that. But they think they're the original person. So they're kind of having this like experience of continuity, I guess you could call it. But then they get tapped by the dark forces to play an even bigger role, to play like an operative role, like the Meghan Markle situation. And they willingly go along with it because they're excited about rising up in the ladder. They're excited about the potential. They want to go along with the agenda because they've literally been cloned to do that. So a lot of the cloned vessels that have engaged in major criminal activity, like they're still accountable for that. The entity that is actually that vessel is accountable for that. And eventually we'll probably find the original in a stasis pod. There's like for the Meghan Markle example, there's probably a young girl named Meghan Markle about the age of 19 or 20 in a stasis pod. That's my best guess right now as to what's going on with that situation. And Adam Apollo, he's one. Like it's fascinating for me too to be a person who can perceive soul level blueprints, because I can perceive Adam Apollo's original blueprint. Like the satanic version of him that's operating now, it's like the dude has always had a little ego. The dude has always had a little ego, but like this version of him, it's just way more exacerbated for compromise. And finding this information about the potential of large-scale cloning operations on this planet has been extraordinary and alarming. But also it's okay. We're calling on the galactic forces of light. We are the galactic forces of light, and we are going to hold these predators accountable. And we are going to find everything they have done. We are going to unveil all of the deception that has happened. And we are going to bring an end to this. And if we do have a lot of beings in stasis, the good news is that they will get to come out at some point. They will have missed a lot of time. So that gives the whole phrase missing time a whole new meaning. It gives the whole idea of alien abduction a whole new meaning. Oh my God. So they'll have missed a lot of time. And they'll have to reintegrate with society from a different perspective. And they'll have to see that their evil twin had been doing things in their name. And that's going to be a very big experience for humanity to go through. That's a very big, mind-breaking sort of experience to have that level of paradox start to occur. To welcome people from the past into our now. So we're all going to be going on a shamanic journey. It appears, it seems, of understanding how we bridge the past into the now, and understanding how technology from the future has affected our past. And understanding that that future technology has actually been here all along. We just have been operating in a level of limitation and darkness on the surface of the planet that we don't have to live in anymore. And so it's going to be a big journey for all of us to continue uncovering how these levels of deception have occurred and what might need to be done to bring resolution and restoration. I've been in New Mexico for this last year, and I'm currently in a location that's like right at the nadir point of the Los Alamos circle. So I'm considering this kind of geographic area in the center of New Mexico, the Los Alamos circle, because the small town of Los Alamos, where we know about the government's facilities being, is like a pinpoint of a much bigger underground operation. And I've been tracking that at different times throughout this last year as I've been traveling through New Mexico, and I've had some major concerns as I have had psychic experiences perceiving like facilities underground in New Mexico. I think a lot of the facilities, I'm getting chills, that the dark forces have used are here, which is why I've been able to perceive a lot of this, because I've been tracking, and I did a death spiral around this Los Alamos circle. I've kind of still been doing it actually, but I did a drive around the Los Alamos circle, a death spiral, months ago. And then my housing journey has taken me, I've been a little nomadic. My housing journey has taken me on another death spiral. and so I'm now at the nadir point. And we're talking about this today. So death to the Nazi agenda, death to their deceptions, death to their connection and interaction with the negative reptilian forces, the negative archonic forces that have infiltrated this world. Welcome to disclosure. Welcome to disclosure. We don't have anything to fear about negative ETs coming to our planet. They're already here. They're already here, and we just have to kick them out. That's what I've learned over the last couple of years. And they have attempted to hijack a lot of advanced soul blueprints. They have attempted to create mimics and body doubles to deceive us using advanced consciousness tactics. Use it, and it's like not fair. It's not fair for humanity, because if these negative forces are using those sorts of consciousness tactics that humans have basically been told don't exist, it doesn't give humans a chance to even see through the lies. So that's what I've been doing. It's like, let me see through all of the lies. Let me receive divine revelation, and let me see through the shadow. There is no illusion here. Illusion falls away. We're not here for illusion. We're here for truth. We're here for divine revelation of truth. We're here to stand in our truth as sovereign souls in this world, able to operate freely, free from these negative forces and their interference and the harm they have caused. So I'm sharing this today partially as a PSA about spiritual community watch outs, and to support my community's spiritual safety by naming what I experienced in Marguerite's community recently, and to also say that I'm holding intentions and prayers for her liberation from the dark forces, because she's obviously been affected somehow, and that's not okay. And I hold the intention for the liberation of all souls from the dark forces. I think about what a different world it would be if this hadn't happened. And the beautiful thing is, we'll get a chance to create that. Once these deceptions are done and these operations are not allowed to continue, we'll get to see what a world looks like with just divine intelligence coming through us. We'll get to see what a world looks like when we introduce AI to humanity in a divine way, rather than through these more archonic forces that have been operating. We'll get a chance to see what space technology really looks like, because what we've been shown is a joke. I have learned. It's a joke. You don't travel to space in a tin can. You just don't. So we have a lot of re-education that's happening on the planet, and a lot of my work has been a really intense negative engagement with these dark forces to say, get out of my field. Pardon me, get out of my field. Like, get out of my mind, get out of my field, get out of my reality. I don't welcome you here. You're not welcome here. You're not welcome in my life. You're not welcome in my mind. It is my choice to live sovereign. It is my choice to live free. It is my choice to live in truth. It is my choice to be a vessel of divine light. And anything that is attempting to interfere with that in a forceful way, in a way that's violating the free will of souls, cannot continue. And especially forces that are harming and abusing children, that cannot continue. And so it appears that these forces have infiltrated spiritual communities, partially to keep folks just kind of focused on basic love and light and not looking at the shadow, not looking at the deeper shadow, and not doing something about it. And just kind of like letting it be. And that's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. Because that's a real major violation of our empowerment. When we are steered in a way by a spiritual authority to not be in our power to hold negative forces accountable. That's really unfortunate. It steers us into a place of being passive. And when we're passive, we're basically just allowing things to happen to us. So, more to come on the methods of satanic deception that have occurred in this world. More to come on the cloning topic and what we are learning about that and what can be done about that. And I think a big takeaway here is to just recognize that because a lot of the people we have turned to, the people we have admired, the people we have wanted to see as authority figures, the people we have wanted to have tell us things about our reality or ourselves or our path or whatever, this is a big wake-up call about those beings actually being entities, and us having accidentally found ourselves in these negative entanglements with negative entities. And that's not what we want. And we want our true spiritual teachers back. We want the true versions of all of these souls back, because what we've been interacting with on this planet is not totally of the light. We've had just such major deception that's just been so hard to see through. And these forces have done a good job of influencing people's minds to believe that these things couldn't be possible, but they are. And I've experienced the level of trauma in my system from healing and disentangling from these negative engagements that tells me it's true. Because again, this level of negative energy is not totally natural in the Earth Matrix. Like what I have engaged over this last year, I can now say for absolute certainty that level of negativity is not natural to the Earth Matrix. It's not natural to like a normal organic system of life. And so now we have to do something about it. Okay, thank you for coming to my painting show and tell and for having this conversation with me in true sacred space today. This is a space of truth. This is a space of divine revelation. This is a space of asking the hard questions. This is a space of calling our power back from beings that have attempted to subjugate us or steer us in ways that are less divine. And this is a space of highest galactic light. And this is a space of liberation. So thank you for joining me on this liberation journey. It's been a big journey, and it's still continuing. There will be a lot more work in the future related to this liberation process. But what I've done over this last year is some initiatory investigation work to give us a lay of the land on how these deceptions are occurring, and so that we can allow our consciousness to see the full picture and to not be covered in any negative illusion, to not be controlled by any negative illusion. Okay, we'll end this chat for today here. Thank you for joining me. I'm very grateful. Thank you for witnessing this entity removal and clearing. This is a planetary entity removal happening, and we'll just let it keep happening. And we will get this planet liberated eventually. Okay, bye for now.